So this last image here is a nice visual representation of the geography of ancient Egypt and how it really affected the way that they lived. Starting in the north, which is actually Lower Egypt. Again, interesting, the geography is naming the places, right? Lower Egypt is lower in elevation. The Nile River Delta is very much a place with ports and places for trade to from other areas around the Mediterranean to make contact with the Egyptians. It's a very easy place to sail into. In fact, you could easily sail all the way up the Nile. And here we see some names of some ancient Egyptian cities, like Memphis is the old capital of Egypt. Here we see the stones were quarried for the pyramid here and built over here. As we see the length of the Nile, it pretty much runs the entire length of Egypt, and it holds the whole country together in a way. The farmland all along the Nile, because of the Nile's water, that's where farmland could be, agriculture could exist. They even were able to dig ditches to interesting ways to irrigate, bring the water into the interior to make more farmland. But source of food was the Nile. Source of transportation was the Nile. Source of contact was the Nile. The Nile was everything for Egypt. By contrast, though, we have something that is quite inaccessible, inhospitable. We have what the Egyptians called the Red Land, which is really the desert. Red Land in ancient Egyptian, Red Land would have been pronounced something like Deshret. And if you think about the word Deshret and actually write it on paper, D-E-S-H-R-E-T, it actually looks an awful lot like desert, and that's where we get the name desert. But this was very tough to get through, and you wouldn't ever have, you would be very well protected. You wouldn't go out into the desert all that often, but you would be very well protected by the desert on both sides. And one of the things we said in class, it doesn't show in this map, but the cataracts, the rocky areas in Upper Egypt in the south, kept people who lived further upriver on the Nile from sailing downriver, kept Egypt very well protected on three sides, but open to the Mediterranean. In many ways, you couldn't make it up any better than this for a civilization to flourish. Easy access to all the trade of the world. Remember, at this time, the Mediterranean was the world. A wonderful source of water for irrigation and fishing and farmland and all of transportation and all of that, while at the same time being well protected by the desert. It's really a wonderful way for a civilization to develop. And it's no surprise really that one of the world's first great amazing civilizations developed in ancient Egypt.